We're the Pleiadians. We're cosmic beings of light. Part of your family of light. However, a different aspect from the angelic realms.
Hi, and welcome to The Seeker
and The Skeptic.
I'm Kat, and I'm the flaky, unpredictable, irrational seeker.
And I'm Rebecca. I'll be your sarcastic, grumpy, close-minded, skeptical host. Or maybe we should just be ourselves.
Sounds good to me. This podcast is going to dive deep into controversial topics that some may call new age or woo-woo, or just plain foolish.
And look at them with a skeptical but open-minded approach that will hopefully encourage understanding and acceptance from both the skeptics
and the seekers. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about part 2 of our Glastonbury experience. And this was the day where we got to decide between some different events. We had picked up, there's a little newspaper that you find all around Glastonbury. I think it was called The Oracle.
It was called The Oracle. It's a great name. Yeah, little, I guess it was about 50 sheets of paper, maybe, stapled together, black and white printed.
It's very good. And it was just packed with all the different kinds of woo things we could experience. So some of the things on this night were the Sacred Arcanum of Sound with temple sounders Dawn and Patrick at the Goddess Temple. Pleiadian Healing with Michiel Kroon in the Miracles Room. We had some clairvoyance with Caroline Coe. We had a concert for healing and awakening.
That's tempting.
King Arthur. So this really was a very difficult choice, and we had lots of options. But we went for the Pleiadian Healing with Michiel Kroon.
Yeah, I just had to insist. Pleiadian healing, what could be more exciting? I've always been fascinated by the idea of aliens. I never really believed in them. So maybe that's part of the reason why it seems so strange to me, because I don't really get people who believe in aliens. I mean, obviously, I think maybe there might be extraterrestrial life out there, but the idea that it's coming down to Earth and talking to us, especially through our minds, seemed mad. And that's because it's a channeling. I didn't know anything about channeling. I didn't know that it was still a thing. Like, I know people used to do it in the past. So I was just like, this sounds way too interesting.
Well, I didn't know. I knew about channeling, so I can share a bit about that in a bit. But this idea of the Pleiadians, I'd never even heard of that term until actually this week after we'd come back. I heard the star Pleiades mentioned on an astrological podcast.
Oh, of course. Oh, no, like, she's back into astrology.
couldn't go away. But yeah, it was new to me, and I'm just wondering if all of this is kind of getting more trendy again.
Yeah, quite possible. Because it's a very 90s thing, isn't it?
Yeah, like I think of Men in Black, and I grew up being, I would say that aliens are one of the things that I would be like, it's one of the things I'm less likely to dismiss.
Really?
Right, yeah, I'm more sure about aliens than I am about most things.
Wow. When you say most things, do you mean like you're more sure about aliens
than I am about how the we internet. Are here? The internet. In terms of things like, let's say, ghosts, there are lots of things that we're going to be talking about on this podcast, and I feel like there's a good chance there are aliens out there.
Yeah, I agree completely. The idea of there being life on other planets seems quite possible to me. It's just the leap of thinking that it's coming to visit us.
Exactly.
That's where I find it's unlikely. But actually, he's not just into aliens, is he?
No.
Michiel?
Should we call him
Let's call him Sven.
Let's call him Sven.
Because we didn't catch his name. when we were first introduced, and he looked like a Sven. So that's how I've been referring to him in my head.
I think you'll get a better picture in your head if we call him Sven. So, he also channels the Archangel Michael. And I guess they have the name in common.
That's kind of what intrigued me. It seemed very strange that, and this was basically my expectations or questions going in, were like, why would you be channeling aliens and angels? What's the link? Why the two?
Right.
And he never really clearly explained that. Although when I did a bit of research afterwards, I sort of got an idea of how the two might be linked.
Oh, interesting. So I didn't know about that. I just feel like Archangel Michael is very much, it was a common thread in a lot of what we were seeing and learning about in Glastonbury. But with the aliens, I mean...
It is a bit out there. So basically what we did with Sven is he took us on a guided meditation where he said a lot of stuff, a lot of interesting stuff about identity and stuff, personal identity. And then he channeled first Archangel Michael, and then he did a bit of singing, and then he challenged channeled the Pleiadians, and then we some other stuff happened, and then we had a bit of a sharing circle where we talked about it afterwards. But when we arrived there, it was very odd.
Well, I don't know about it being odd. I mean, I thought it was done really well. So we walk into this like kind of dark little room.
That qualifies as odd to me.
And I really like the fact that it was pretty official but formal. Informal at the same time. So there was a nice lady who was taking our names down and taking a bit of money. I think we paid £7 each, which wasn't a lot. And Michael or Sven was there. And what was interesting is I was kind of expecting this channeler to kind of like, almost be on a throne somewhere hidden away. But he wasn't. He was there greeting us all like really nicely. And I really liked that. I felt very welcome. And so I was quite comfortable.
Welcoming to be fair. It was odd in that it was a small dark room called the Miracles Room. We had to go through a tunnel where there was like all these semi-precious stones set into the walls to get there. So in that way, it was odd. Yeah. But you're right. They were very welcoming. They seemed like nice people. They had some candles there. They had some little mysterious bottles of ointments.
Which this is another thing I loved. We were encouraged very nicely at the start to experiment with bottles. It wasn't like this weird...
Help yourself to our ointments, they said.
It's true. And they kind of said, this one's good for kind of lifting you up and this one's good for taking you down. Because I think a lot of these people are very conscious of you not floating away with the fairies. You want to be grounded, as they say. Yeah. And there was like a little bottle for each, which makes me think of Alice in Wonderland when she has like...
I assume they were like essential oils or something.
That's all.
They said that we could put them on our chakra points, or we could ingest them. So I put like a drop on my hand and then licked it off my hand,
like you were doing like a shot or something. And I was like, I don't know. I'm gonna do that too.
I don't know how, because I didn't want to like get the little pipette and put it anywhere near my tongue, because then other people, it might be a bit gross.
Yeah, and you don't want to look like you're like shooting it back.
Yeah, you're clearly not supposed to have more than like a couple of drops.
Yeah.
So it was difficult. But then I noticed that other people copied what I did. Yeah. So either I just did it right by accident, or no one else knew how to do it either, and they just assumed that I knew what I was doing.
The way you did it is so confident. I was like, well, she's done this before, clearly. This is just like a regular thing. And I also had fun with the Palo Santo, which I'm enjoyed.
Oh, that's that weird incense that you love.
And so like the fact that I felt comfortable to lean over into the circle and pick up a stick and light it, I mean, that's a good sign in a circle of people. And as an introvert who doesn't always take well to these kind of group situations, I must say they created a really nice, comfortable space. And there were also these oracle cards.
Oracle cards, she says, as if we should all know what that means.
So imagine a deck of cards, I guess.
Larger than a normal deck of cards, like maybe twice the size?
Yeah,
normal cards?
Similar to like a tarot set. Yeah. And they'd actually designed them themselves.
Yeah.
And they were all kind of like spread around in the circle, which was a nice thing to look at.
So and we're sitting on little cushions on the floor, on this nice carpeted floor. The lights are dim, and that's when we all. Well, I started just like trying to make chit chat, because it's kind of awkward. Just talking about how strange it was that we came without a watch, so we didn't know if we were on time. Yep. Little things like that. And then a lady who I assume is called Carol. Not because she introduced herself as Carol. She just seemed like a Carol. Make of that what you will. She started telling us about, this is right. Sven said last time this guy came along, brought his healing pyramids.
Yes, and he might be coming tonight.
Yeah, and how he was really hoping he was coming tonight because it was such an intense experience. We don't know what healing pyramids are, crystal healing pyramids. Like, oh, that sounds interesting. And then Carol's like, oh, yes, I work with healing pyramids.
They're very intense.
They're very intense.
They're very strong. And almost kind of saying like, this is something, it's almost like somebody who's like into hardcore drugs and it's kind of saying, oh, you kind of don't want to mess with those drugs. Like, or like, maybe some people could, but for you peasants, like you wouldn't be able to handle the power of the crystals.
Her slightly superior attitude was aided by the fact that she was the only one sitting on a chair, looking down at us all, saying, when I work with crystal triangles on my clients, I never use them above the shoulders. And Sven had just been telling us how it was amazing when this guy put the pyramid right on top of his head. So Sven's kind of looking, everyone's looking awkwardly, like, does she realise? Yeah. Because she didn't say explicitly anything. She was just apropos of nothing, saying, oh, by the way, these things are super dangerous. But she didn't say, and therefore, I think what you did is wrong, or I think we shouldn't do it, or anything. She was just like putting it out there.
Putting it out there. And I think Sven dealt with all of this stuff very well. He didn't like kind of argue back with that, It was nice. It was nice the way he handled stuff like that.
Yeah, and then the conversation changed tack. We were a little bit early. And then the guy with the crystal pyramids walks in.
Well, hey.
And how big would you say they are?
Like a foot high.
Yeah, about a foot high. I'm gesturing my hands. It's not helpful to you. Maybe a foot high. It's just the vertices of a triangle. Imagine a 3D triangle shape, pyramid shape. Yeah. And they're made out of quartz crystal.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful thing.
It's a really beautiful thing, and it's hanging from a piece of string. And he has like a little stick that he hits it with, and it's like a singing bowl. It makes a tone. So obviously, we've just had this conversation about how intense and dangerous the pyramids are, and here's this guy unveiling his pyramid. It's all wrapped in a velvet cloth.
Fortunately, I don't think he was in the room when Carol said that.
No, he wasn't. He had no idea that any of this had happened.
Perfect.
So now we're all looking at Carol and we're looking at Sven and think someone has to say something. And Sven, bless his heart, he really does his best. So he just says to the guy whose name I don't know, pyramid guy, he says, hey, pyramid guy, when you're doing your pyramids, maybe you should just check that everyone's cool. Maybe we could all say now if there's anyone who feels uncomfortable with the pyramid being around their head.
Yeah. He's really acknowledging what Carol says.
Yeah. Because it is an intense experience. So if you're not comfortable with the pyramid being around or above your head, just say now to pyramid guy. And the pyramid guy's like, oh, but it's great. I don't see why anyone wouldn't like it. And he's like, yeah, I get that. But just in case, now's the time. And Carol just sits there completely silent.
Right. But like what's interesting is, and so did everyone else, which basically says to Carol, we don't believe you.
Yeah, I kind of felt guilty. Like I should have said, I don't know. I felt
defer to Carol. Like, Carol, what do you think?
Yeah, clearly. Do you think we should go for this, Carol? But I really wanted to have the pyramid put around my head because it seemed like fun. So I didn't want to. Maybe I should have said, I'm a little bit concerned because of the concerns that Carol's been raising. Right. But I think I'm going to give it a shot. I should have said something, but we all just sat there awkwardly looking at Carol, expecting her to say, well, I don't want it around my head. But she didn't say that.
Maybe she thought that she could handle it, but we couldn't. She did.
But then that must have made the whole experience quite stressful for her because she's thinking, oh my goodness, they're getting out these intense pyramids. What if they go into like spiritual shock syndrome? Right. And I have to deal with it because I'm clearly the only one qualified who knows anything about these crystal pyramids.
Yeah, it's interesting that it wasn't brought up again, basically.
So,
long story short.
Basically, Sven sat us all down and had a bit of a chat to us about what he was going to do. He said something like, I want to be really clear what I'm doing and, so that you know what to expect and know what the deal is. He sort of told us a little bit of his own story. He's from the Netherlands and he said he used to study physics, but then he had some trauma in his life to process and he came out the other side. I can't remember how he described it.
Yeah, I think it's almost like, I think he might have mentioned and kind of just living a healthier lifestyle and like even talking about maybe like healthier eating and stuff like that. And I think in a way that a lot of people maybe in their 20s or late 20s sort of find ways of feeling better and kind of taking care of themselves. Yeah. And that's just what it sounds like he did.
Yeah, but unlike most people, in their 20s.
He didn't just hit the gym.
He came out the other side, able to talk. He didn't explain how this happened, but able to channel the energies of the Archangel Michael and the Pleiadians. And he said basically he's gonna let each of them have their chance to speak through him, and we are just to relax and let it sort of wash over us. And if we feel like, anytime we feel like we're floating away, we should lie on our backs and put our feet on the ground and press our feet down into the ground.
It's a really nice, like, I liked stuff like that because it's giving people options. It's not saying you guys all must sit up straight, and it doesn't make you like wonder, am I doing the appropriate thing? He's kind of like at all times giving you an option of things to do, and I think options are really helpful for people.
Yeah, and like he's not telling you what your experience should be.
Yes,
which is quite nice. But it was a bit frustrating that he never actually explained any of like how he got in contact with these beings, or like, I mean, my mind's just whirring asking all these questions.
I will say that he does these every few days, so he does a lot of these, and there is a lot of information on his website which we'll talk about. So I'm thinking, I think there might have been a couple of people there that he'd definitely seen before. Yeah. So I feel like he's probably like not gonna be delivering his full spiel every time.
He's not going to be giving us the 101.
I guess not, but that's fine. I think he's still kind of prepped us fairly well.
Yeah, the big thing that he said, I'm pretty sure this was him, before he got taken over by the spirits. I think he was talking about how it's very important that we don't, although he was talking about if you feel like you're floating away, you should lie down and ground yourself. Don't get too grounded in this reality, because a new paradigm is coming. Yes. And you don't want to be stuck, grounded to the old earth. And I was like, that's a really odd thing to say. But then that actually remained a constant thread.
It was.
Throughout the whole evening.
And something that I haven't heard a lot of. And actually, since trying to research a bit about this new paradigm, I haven't found very many people talking about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was surprised. I thought it would be like this massive thing. It would be branded. It would be like, you know, you'd find it everywhere. But I don't know where he got that from.
I have a feeling, I could be wrong, but I have a feeling John, who took us on the tour of the Divine Light tour, where we worked with the energies of the earth and learnt a lot of mythology, which you'll find in our history on, it's just called Glastonbury, that episode. But I think he talked about there being a paradigm shift coming up, and that's why the Archangel Michael ley line was getting so powerful nowadays.
Okay. I mean,
because you said, like 2020, and he's like, I don't like to put a date on it.
Yeah, so actually that's true. I haven't heard about the terms new paradigm and old paradigm as much, but I have heard a lot of people in different groups either talking about this 2020 in terms of like astrology, that being a significant year, and then we've got this idea that we are moving, or we have moved into the age of Aquarius, right? So that is a new age.
Yeah, I don't know exactly.
But they've been saying that since like the 70s.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing that happens like every generation thinks something is amazing is going to happen
about their generation.
Yeah. So it's not really that surprising. Anyway, I don't know how he makes these decisions, but the first person or entity he channeled was Archangel Michael.
I am the Archangel Michael, which he kept reminding us of.
Yeah. Oh, well, no, the best thing about, before he even started talking as the Archangel Michael, is he did this weird like dial-up modem noise, and he kept on doing it as if he was losing connection. When I say dial-up modem, maybe some of our listener doesn't remember what a dial-up modem sounds like, but it used to be like a brr, when you log onto the internet. Something. Yeah. But the dial-up for the Archangel Michael is something like K K ish ish K K K ish ish. It's like a sound like that. It sounds much
soothing.
better in
it's
his
fine.
voice.
Yeah. It was fine. I quite like that kind of signaling to us, saying, you know, this is, pay attention now because the important person is speaking, basically.
Yeah, I guess so. Nice. Yeah, but he also let us know that the important person was speaking by saying, I am the Archangel Michael.
Right.
You're listening to the Archangel Michael on 92.5 to 96.1 Radio Sven. Periodically, just like, what do they call them? Signatures, radio signatures, so you know who you're listening to.
It's pretty, maybe we should have that for this show. So can you recall much of what Archangel Michael told us?
Well, I think what I got from the old Archangel Michael was just a general sort of comforting vibe. Like, you guys are love. Yeah. I'm love. I love you. Yeah. Everything will be fine.
And I will say, while I can't really remember what words, he said, which I think is quite a common experience, especially when you're really in it.
I just
really
have a bad memory and a little bit stoned.
And maybe
stoned. We should reveal that at this point.
Yes.
We weren't entirely sober when we turned up at Sven's experience.
And it may have impacted my feelings over this, particularly the Archangel Michael bit, where I felt like I was breathing in and out love, which is very nice.
Yeah.
It's this idea of like having your heart really open. And I've been in like guided meditations and like yoga classes before when people tell you to do that. That's kind of like the instructions. But I've never been able to do that or really know what anyone's talking about. I think it's a nice idea, but I really felt it. I felt really fuzzy and warm, and in a way that I've only done once in a group circle, and at that point I was off my face on a drug called ayahuasca. So it maybe was
this
something.
This time you're on a different drug,
right?
So,
or it was the Archangel Michael.
Yeah,
but
possible.
You know.
I did. He continued this theme of which I really liked, which Sven talked about at the beginning as well, about how we can't get too caught up in the stories we tell about ourselves and who we are, and that we have to kind of let those go and be in the moment, I guess. I mean, that sounds really hippie-ish, but the idea of like the fact that we create a narrative self, this is an idea in philosophy that's been going on for ages. I mean, that's true. We focus on the things, the events in our lives that are most important to telling that particular story. So you remember certain incidents from your childhood because they lead on to the next incident, and we're constantly reframing and rejigging all those memories to tell the story that leads up to us being us at this moment recording this podcast. And I thought, keeping that in mind, because if your story-based self, as the Archangel Michael would call it, was a negative one, like I'm such a loser or everything I do is rubbish, and but you're really attached to it and you keep telling yourself that story, that's going to be a massive bummer. That's going to ruin your life. So I got really into that.
It's like, a brilliant concept.
That whole message.
And like you said, people deal with it in philosophy. People also deal with it in like kind of like the coaching world, the positive psychology, cognitive behavioral psychology, NLP. Like everyone kind of touches on this idea of tell yourself another story, tell yourself a better story, reframe the past. That's a word that psychologists use quite a lot. Because it's really helpful.
Yeah, because that sounds a bit like, like positive thinking, like, just imagine the best. But the thing is, because there isn't kind of any objective self out there or in here, everything we say is kind of made up about ourselves.
And we've got, I don't say we have like a full choice, but we've got quite a bit of choice.
Yeah. I've got a little quote from Sven on this topic. Not from Sven, from the Archangel Michael. He said, "Drop any story-based self, any story based on thoughts you might have in this moment, simply through not believing them."
Nice. It's simple.
It's that simple, dear ones. Yet I realise too that it's not easy to be in this dimension.
Oh, it's so sweet. And like all of those words, they are so comforting and like acknowledging, because just as I said, but it's, it sounds so simple and you're like, but we know what you're going to say. So yeah, it was really like, it was wise. It felt wise.
It did feel wise, but I did feel to some extent that I was bringing quite a lot to it, because I've heard of this theory of homo neurans, like the idea of the, instead of, human storyteller, so narrans as in narrative. So this idea that we create our identities through stories, and that construction self is like this active ongoing process. I've read about that a little bit in philosophy, and I wonder if I came to Sven and said, it's so cool when you talked about that, he'd be like, what? Well, he might be like, because it wasn't him, it was the Archangel Michael, but I don't know how much of this is like me sort of making stuff up to make it make more sense.
You're doing the same thing. You're fitting it into your story. And however you come about these ideas, and this is what's also really interesting about even some of the stuff that we've delved into so far, but also in my own like research into different people, other people who are channel and stuff like that. Like this idea of creating your own reality. I don't know if you've heard about much of that idea.
Like full on the secret stuff?
Kind of stuff. I would say that is a variant of this. Yeah. Because you are creating your own reality through the stories you tell.
Yeah. I mean,
to an extent.
We probably have more power over controlling how we identify and how we think of ourselves than we do over like
what we manifest.
Exactly.
Yeah,
what
sure.
we manifest, like stuff in the outside world. Although
yeah.
if you go about having a positive attitude, people generally like people who have a positive attitude, and
And you're
probably
going to
good
get more
stuff
free
happens.
stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll go with you up to a certain point, but not much further.
It's a sliding scale, and it's really interesting that people can come at it, the same idea, from different angles and take it far or further than others.
And the whole time this is going on, Sven's just talking in this very soothing, slow. He's got this accent that's very hard to place.
God, I forgot how slow he spoke.
I know. I emailed him and said, "Hey, can I have the recording?" Because I know he made a recording of him channeling, and he sent it to me like immediately,
So sweet.
which was very sweet of him, but also weird. He sent me the link to the thing, and I started to play it back, and it didn't seem that slow at the time, but listening to it just in my office,
It's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have to play that on like triple speed to like make any sense, because my brain moves too fast. Like I couldn't even almost understand a lot of it, because by the time he finished a sentence, I was thinking about something else.
Yeah, you can't remember the beginning of the sentence, but I think that's kind of the point, isn't it? Because he's kind of lulling you into this sort of slightly sleepy, lovely, comforty place. Although he did say very clearly right near the beginning, and also a little bit suspiciously, "I'm not hypnotizing you."
Oh yeah.
Oh, why would you say that? Why bring it up?
I wonder if some people, again, the word hypnotize has more negative connotations with it, and some people, he just wants to kind of put us at ease.
But now I'm suspicious that he is immediately, because he said that word.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really, because I'm sure we might talk about this on another episode, but I'm a bit skeptical,
about
unsurprisingly,
hypnosis.
about the whole process of hypnotism.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that he brought it up is like, it makes me think, oh, the lady doth protest too much.
Yes. So at some point, the triangle came out.
Oh,
right?
yeah. So the triangle guy, he unwrapped his velvet triangle at the beginning. He unwrapped the crystal triangle from the velvet covering that it was in.
I remember that actually was. It just reminded me that it was like this really amazing moment where everyone was kind of like,
oh, yeah. And he put it in the middle, and then to charge, perhaps, or just to be with all the other sacred objects. There's some candles, there's those ointments we mentioned earlier, there's the ring of oracle cards. It's all going on in the center of the circle. So he puts this pyramid in there, and then I don't know at what point he decided it was appropriate, but he obviously felt the energies moving in such a way that compelled him to get up and get his triangle out.
yeah.
And he started sort of swinging it around.
I wasn't watching him. I think at this point I think I had lay down, but I sat back up again when he came around, because he visited all of us, as far as I know.
Yeah, I think I was sitting up at the time, and I sensed movement, so I opened my eyes and saw him get up and pick it up. So he's holding it dangling from a piece of string from the central point, like the top of the pyramid, and he gives it a little ding, and then it just resonates. And like I said before, it's kind of like a singing bowl, but not. It's different.
Well, yeah, it's like a singing bowl mixed with an actual triangle musical instrument.
And then he spins it.
Right.
So the sound is like,
yeah,
like it's got that tremble in it, because you're hearing it going around and around in circles.
It's mystic. I don't know what to call it, but it was nice and different.
Yeah, it was amazing. And you have to imagine that overlaid with Sven speaking very slowly in his lulling accent, all these words of wisdom from the Archangel Michael, which were a bit repetitive.
Yes.
So they're kind of losing their meaning. They're slow, so it's hard to remember what he said, and they're losing their meaning just because he's repeating the same things. And then this sound, and the guy came round to each of us in turn to give us a pyramid healing.
Yes, it was lovely. I remember thinking, I don't think he's doing it above my head.
Oh, really?
It didn't feel like it was. It felt like it was like behind me, but that just might have been where he tapped it. But you said it was.
Yeah, I saw him out of the corner of my eye doing you, and he definitely went on the top of your head and like swung it around your head. But when he was swinging it around my head, I was a bit concerned, because I was like, he just slips once and the corner of this thing is going in my eye.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's actually at eye level.
Yeah. It's going around. So you just had your eyes closed. You didn't even know.
But I didn't even sense it. Like, very strange.
You have to imagine he's holding the string about a foot above your head, and then the triangle itself is whizzing around your head fairly quickly.
That's cool.
I mean, Carol had concerns about the intense energies. I had just health and safety
Maybe
concerns.
she just like smashed a lot of people in the head with that triangle. It was like, this is quite intense. Shouldn't do that too much.
It was very strange. I did think oh, I wonder what the deal is with these pyramids. So I looked them up when we got home, and I found that for a set of 5, it's £167 on Amazon, which is less than I would have expected.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much he paid. The claim is that they influence your brainwave frequencies and can heal you via that, because you see, physical illness is all just your mind.
Right.
This is a very, I mean, I'm sure you've come across this before,
Yeah.
this idea that we can control our own health by just thinking more positive thoughts.
Yeah.
This is kind of an extension of that. Like, the problem is that if you've got like a bad foot, the problem isn't in your foot.
Yeah.
It's in your head, man.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is readjust the frequencies, whatever that might mean, in your head.
And you can do that with the pyramid.
Yes, that's the claim they're making. So it's a little bit of a dubious health claim, although the guy didn't say anything about that. He just said that, I don't think he even explained exactly what he was doing with them. He was just like, I feel moved by the energies and I swing my pyramid around, and that's what I do. That's my thing.
Yeah, and we will talk more about pyramid healing in another...
Yeah.
Because I've got some stuff to say about that.
I'm sure you do.
And then we had the Pleiadians.
Oh yeah, and then the
making
Pleiadians
their
came
feature.
through.
Did they have a different dial tone?
I don't think so. I think it was just KK
It was that,
for them
yeah,
as well.
yeah.
He was doing some singing. Like, I got the feeling that whenever he got bored or wasn't sure
Didn't
what
know
to say
what to say,
next,
yeah.
he did a bit of singing.
He did, yeah.
And his singing was really interesting because it reminded me of like Tibetan throat singing,
Okay.
which is this cool thing where they sort of, it's like a weird croaky sound. The reason I know about it, the reason I know about it is for 2 reasons. One is I met some guys in northern India who were doing it, which was awesome. But then also it's really a big influence on like death metal vocalists to get that really croaky sound of their voice that they do. And I love making weird sounds, as we'll talk about in a moment, because he invited us to make sounds, which was perhaps unwise. Anyway, so his singing, Tibetan throat singing, how it was explained to me is that they do the same thing that a lot of instrument players, like didgeridoo players, do, where they've trained themselves to breathe in and out at the same time.
Oh, that's so weird.
So you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing that. That's very cool.
Yeah, I can't imagine how it's done, but
I'm thinking about Jack Black doing the inward singing song.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yeah. Anyway, it makes this really odd sound, and also it's kind of confusing because he doesn't seem to be stopping to take a breath.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
really
amazing. Cool. Anyway, so he was doing this kind of weird singing, and then the Pleiadians come through, and I don't know if the Pleiadians really had much different to say from Archangel Michael.
I mean, by this time, I was really tuning out. I don't even know what I was thinking, though. I just got bored. I don't know.
I think they might have invited us, I'm sure this must have been them, because who else would be up in space? I think they invited us to see the world from the moon.
Yes.
Instead of seeing it from our own vantage point, and how that would just give a new perspective.
Yeah.
Which is good advice.
I will say that they seemed a bit more highbrow than Archangel Michael.
Really?
I thought some of the ideas were a little bit more strange, and there were some more analogies, because I think that's when he talked about alchemy and this idea of water and fire not normally being able to mix in our world, but in their world you could like be on fire but also in water at the same time.
Yeah, like fire and water would move together.
Yeah.
But that's not just their world, that's the new paradigm that we're moving into.
Cool.
In the new paradigm, dogs and cats will be friends.
He did not say that.
He didn't say that, no. But I elaborated. Fire and water will move together. All of it's going to be like, all this world of opposites we live in right now is going to dissolve, and everything will be like a weird mishmash unity type thing. Yeah, very strange.
Yeah.
But nothing particularly alien.
No.
I thought like aliens would have something new to bring to the picture. He didn't.
Yeah, they seemed very like us.
They let us know another thing they had in common with human beings is they were concerned about our finances.
Oh yeah, hang on. So you were really like, it's almost like this struck you, but I remember thinking, yeah, this makes sense. Of course he's going to bring this up.
I was so surprised. I was like, I don't know. It was sort of like a moment where I wanted to open my eyes and look around and be like, guys, what the fuck is this? Because like this is supposed to be a spiritual experience. Why are you bringing up money? It just seemed weird.
This is something that I've seen. And again, I feel like if you've come from maybe watching something like The Secret and interested in Abraham Hicks, and talk about that another day, but it's this idea that it's not unspiritual to want like financial abundance. And those are the words that are always used. It's always about abundance.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said. I think that's exactly what they said, what the Pleiadians said.
Yeah.
They said that we didn't need to worry about money and that we will soon be in a time of abundance.
Yeah. And it's like, for me, that is comforting. Like, it's really practical. Like, he's not just talking about like love and light. They're talking about things that we do care about on this earth.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why it's comforting for sure. I was just surprised.
It's not traditional. Yeah.
No, like when I was more deep into all this stuff, it was like anathema to talk about money because money is what, the norms do. That's what the straights do. Like, not what us cool hippie people do. We only care about, energies and spirits and stuff. We don't care about money. Like, it would be, I have a feeling that it would be really inappropriate to have brought that up back in my day. Yeah. Back in my day in the 90s.
No, but I think that is really true, and it really reflects the new paradigm.
Yeah.
But no, it is interesting, and I definitely did think about it when he said it. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. The other thing, I think he did make a toilet joke at one point, which was nice.
He's talking about you might have a time where you can sit down and connect with the energies.
Yes.
I think this might have been Archangel Michael, though, not the Pleiadians.
It's possible,
Well, the interesting thing about Pleiadians, I'll tell you a bit more about the Pleiadians later, but I found out from my research that Pleiadians don't actually excrete through their anuses. So that wouldn't have been a joke that they could have made. They eat food and then they excrete through their skin, and they wear special clothing that turns their excretion into like lube.
Oh, wow.
That's why they're all like, whenever you see a picture of them, they look all oiled up.
That's their shit.
Yeah. Literally. But what he was saying was, if you have a moment of quiet during the day, this would be a good time to try and connect with the energies or something.
Yes.
And he, as an example, he gave
on the toilet.
Yeah.
Which was nice.
And then he had a little
very down to
chuckle as well,
earth. Yeah.
which was sweet and surprising.
Yes.
It was almost like he was surprised by what he said.
Yeah. Where did that come from? No, it was nice. And how did he wrap it up?
First he let us make our own noises. I think that was towards the end. After the Pleiadians had come and gone, he said, why didn't you join me in just making whatever noises flow through you?
Yeah. Which I rejected, like I do with all singing. And I might have made some quiet, I quite like making that sound. It's one thing I'll do. But to the left of me, I hear Rebecca making a much stranger sound. Don't know if you want to demonstrate any of this.
Well, everyone else was just omming. And that's what he was doing as well. He kind of set the tone,
it's mostly
the literal
kind
tone.
of like ommy sounds.
Yeah. And that's very nice. But the weird thing was, just the other day, I'd been saying something to Kat about this strange noise I can make that I'm really proud of. So I thought this is a perfect time to bust it out. Let me see if I can do it now. I mean, I can go on for ages.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing. I'm convinced that I can go on for longer than most people can do making that noise. And I'm really pleased with it. There's something that gives me weird satisfaction from making it.
I remember trying to like assess it, and I was like, actually, this is like it's a nice tone that it's different from the yum yum yum.
Oh yeah, that was the noise he was making. Yum yum yum.
It was just really funny in itself.
So Kat has me on her left making that strange noise quietly, because I was self-conscious about it. I knew it was an odd noise to be making, but I also had this idea. This is like just my ego getting in the way. Archangel Michael would have a lot to say about it, I'm sure. But I'm like, they'll probably think I'm having a really intense experience because I'm making such an unusual noise.
I'm imagining him being like at the end, and I just heard this amazing sound. Would you like to demonstrate it?
Yeah, exactly. Invite me up to unveil my wonderful sound.
And in the same way, I feel like, because I do feel awkward making any sound really in public other than saying words, that's kind of like a pressure, like, if I'm not making a sound, I'll kind of be rejecting this circle. So it's interesting when stuff like that happens, and that was probably the only time where I felt a level of uncomfort.
Did you hear Paul's sound?
Not really. Okay, actually I did, but I couldn't tell the difference between Sven and Paul's at that point.
Because we haven't mentioned...
I know that there's a sound coming from over there, and it's not a woman.
We brought my partner Paul along with us for this, and he's also of a skeptical bent, and never really flirted with any of this stuff before, so this is pretty new to him. And so when asked to make a sound, obviously he just sings the theme song from Lex, which is like I guess early 90s, late 80s Canadian sci-fi TV show. It's not very well known, I don't think. It's kind of a cult hit. It goes something like, ooh, hey, ooh, ooh, yeah, ooh, yeah. So he's just making this sound, which if you don't know the reference, actually sounds like a little spiritual ditty.
It sounded totally normal. Yeah, basically.
So we just have to hope that Sven is an Alex fan, otherwise he might have been offended or confused, or both.
I think he'd be open to all of this stuff. Sven seemed like that kind of dude.
So then, of course, we finish with a sharing circle.
Yes, I love sharing circles. And normally, it's one of those things that if no one wants to share, I have to put my hand up. Whereas this was like, no, we're all sharing.
There was no escape from the sharing
even if you don't want
circle.
to, even if you have to walk away because we have overrun by over an hour, like or something like that.
What time did we start?
So I think it was 7 and we finished at 9:50.
9:50, 10 to 10, something like. I think he said it's 10 to 10, so
Yeah.
maybe we finished a couple of minutes after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a woman who was like, I have to go. And he was like, oh, first, just tell us about your experience.
Yeah.
And she was like, no, seriously, I have to go. And he made her tell her about the experience.
And the idea was we weren't just talking about our experience, we were also going to share the oracle card that we got to pick.
Yes, he asked us to pick one of the cards from the deck that had been spread out throughout the whole thing and to share which the card was and maybe say something about it or whatever. And he would interpret it. He had a woman helping him who I think it was his romantic partner as well, just so they made eye contact. Whoa, yeah, I think we forgot to say Sven was quite handsome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she'd done well for herself.
Yeah.
He had a weird smile that sort of detracted points, but he was a handsome guy.
And they had a strange relationship. I mean, I think you would if you're kind of one person is running this thing and you've kind of got a helper who's also your partner. Yeah, but
it must be
worked.
weird to be married or in a romantic relationship with someone who can channel the Archangel Michael.
Especially if you're a clinical psychologist, which he was.
Yeah. Apparently. Yeah.
There you go.
Although I was skeptical of that in the same way that I was skeptical of him claiming to be a physicist before he found the truth.
People like that can have these beliefs
I know,
too.
I'm just saying, people say I'm a physicist when what they mean is I did an A-level in physics.
All right.
And I was very interested in it. And people say I'm a psychologist when they mean I read some self-help books.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Probably they are a clinical psychologist and an applied physicist. Probably it's completely honest, but I was skeptical at the time. Yeah.
So we went round and I mean, people's experiences varied. Everyone had something to say.
It was basically, it was very intense. I felt waves of like stuff coming over me, energy. I was very tired by this point. So
you had just started with, I'm very tired.
Yeah. And Kat and Paul both look at me going, please don't say of this shit. Do not say I'm very tired of this shit. But it was genuinely tiring. I couldn't stop yawning. It was late. It'd been a long day, and I'd just been lying on the floor in a semi-darkened room, and I really couldn't stop yawning. It was a relief to tell everyone that I was tired, so they wouldn't think I was being rude because I was yawning throughout. And
yawning,
speaking.
that is like energetic purging in some circles.
Oh well, that's interesting because Carol was purging as well, wasn't she?
No, it wasn't her, but it had been somebody else.
Really?
But she'd been purging earlier that day. Was that the one? It wasn't Carol.
Because the energies had been so
intense
fraught
recently.
That week.
Yeah.
Everyone just nodded and said, yes, this week has been the worst energetic week.
It genuinely... Sorry, this is my astrology stuff, like, affecting me, but it has been really intense.
Has it, though?
Or has it just been really hot in the UK and we're all kind of just feeling a bit knackered?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, if you go into a group of room and go, what a week, everyone will be like, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Most people aren't like...
I had a great week. What are you going apart from me? I was like, what? It's been pretty good. I'm on holiday.
One woman was kind of, I think she's got her own YouTube channel, so she was very like wanting to share about her experience in that kind of like heavy way. I mean, you've got different types of sharing, don't you? Like some people will be very dramatic.
It's kind of heavy but vague.
Yeah.
Like I'm going through a lot of intense things and the energies have been so strong that I've actually been physically sick several times. She was saying this, but she didn't tell us like any details.
No, like for all we know, it could be like a serious medical condition.
Yeah.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh about that. But you did say that you saw a lot of stuff, but you never elaborated on that.
Oh, yeah. So I said, I had visions and stuff because I have visions at the drop of a hat. I'm a vision-ready person. I have a visual imagination. Basically, what I saw, because I was thinking about this thing, because as I said, the self thing made a lot of sense to me.
Right.
And I was I was kind of riffing on that in my mind, and I'm lying there a little bit stoned, semi-dark room, weird noises going on, and I'm thinking about like what it means to be a self, and is there really a self, and digging into all that sort of Buddhist stuff. And I saw like these little scraps of like paper, like the size of tickets that you might take at a counter, peeling off me. But like tissue paper.
I'm imagining you like a piñata, I think.
Exactly, like a piñata. But then he said something about roses or rose light filling us. So I was like, oh, actually, it's like a rose. And it's like the rose petals, that's what's falling off me. And they're all my old identities, you know, they're just falling off. But you don't get to nothing. You know, the rose doesn't just disappear because it keeps growing up inside. So they're like falling off. And then I started I went on this weird train of thought where I was thinking about, did you ever read the Narnia books when you were a kid? Do you remember The Voyage of the Dawn Treader?
Yes.
It starts with maybe the most brilliant line in all children's books ever. It starts with the line, there was a boy called Eustace Clarence Scrubb and he almost deserved it.
Oh,
that's the first line of that
so
book.
Brilliant.
But
I
the
don't
bit
remember
that
that.
I remember is about Eustace. He's just this obnoxious character who's causing trouble the whole time. He's never been to Narnia before. He doesn't believe in it. It's all bullshit. And then, I don't think that's how C.S. Lewis put it, but you get the gist. And then he goes to Narnia and he's still a real spoilsport the whole time. And he goes to this island and he sees a dragon's hoard and he goes and like sits on it and he puts on a bangle that belonged to the dragon. And then he goes to sleep. And overnight he becomes a dragon.
Oh.
And he's like, oh no, I'm a dragon now, and I can't talk to any of my friends, and being a dragon sucks. And it's like, you know, C.S. Lewis was a Christian writer. He was trying to tell this parable of a kid who gets seduced by greed and all the bad things. So he doesn't want to be a dragon, but he is a dragon. And Aslan, who is the lion, who's like God, God, Jesus, whatever, in these stories comes along and tries to help him to undragon him. And he says you have to peel off your skin like a snake. So Eustace tries and he takes off one layer, but it's very, very thin layer. And he's still a dragon. He's just, it's hardly makes any difference. And he's like, I can't strip it off enough. Will you help me, Aslan? And Aslan's like, he gets his claws because he's a lion and he claws right into him and he takes off big hunks, peels off his skin, and it's very painful and intense. And eventually he peels off enough skin so he's a little boy again, deep down underneath. And I was like, all these like symbols are coming up in my head of like what it is like to shed identities and what it is like to have your skin peeled off. And it was like, I mean, I remember that that part of that book really, really vividly because it's beautifully written and it's so obviously a parable.
Yes. God, I would love to. I don't remember any of it. I just remember read it and just falling asleep very quickly afterwards. So I just forgot it all. But I'd love to read that stuff again. I think he was probably making some great little points. Yeah, I mean, they're worth a reread. It's strange that and my dad read them to me when I was a kid, and I reread them again a couple of times, like in my teenage years and stuff. And it's funny because they are so obviously Christian parables when you know what you're looking for. But when I was a kid, Aslan was God to me because I didn't have a Christian education. The only God I was familiar with was Aslan. Yeah. Which is kind of weird, but nice. Yeah, for sure. He's a great If you've got to have a God, make it a lion. Make it a lion. Yeah. Talking lion. Anyway, so I think this is something that we'll probably talk about lots in all our different things. But my mind will take me off and have weird little daydreams all the time. Aww. When I was into this stuff, I used to think that they were coming from somewhere other than myself. And now I'm just like, whoa, look what your mind will do. I was thinking about this morning. Sorry, this is kind of relevant, but it's this idea that when we're dreaming, it doesn't feel like, we're obviously not choosing those dreams. So in that sense, it's more like we are receiving them than we are producing them. But I don't know what I'm saying that we're receiving them from. I'm not saying that we're receiving them from an outside force, but it's closer to that than us like writing a story. Yeah. I don't know. This again, it comes back to this idea of the self, right? Because we have this idea that because if you think about any thought that happens in your brain too closely, you realize that there isn't a little guy sitting up there who came up with it and worked it out on a piece of paper. There's not like a little homunculus inside your head making up ideas. They just sort of are generated, and then you bear witness to them with this this self that you construct through narrative and through all the different processes going on in your head. So it's more exaggerated when you're dreaming or when you're having a vision or any of these things, or a drug trip. Yeah. Because you don't have that sense of self so much anymore, because that's sort of loosed hold a bit, maybe. Right. But something is still making sense of it all. Yeah.
but you're not identified with that something. You're not. It's very strange, and you can definitely see why people would say this is coming from somewhere else, because it doesn't seem like you're making it up.
No, and especially if you're particularly creative. Like, I was amazed with this one, because I mean, I've done guided meditations before, and usually they don't sit very well with me, and I don't feel like I'm going on the journey with them. But I think I did at points with this particular one, and they weren't as varied, but you sound like you do that quite easily, whereas I think I struggle quite a lot with that.
So what would you say, like, we left it, I was feeling tired, I've already said that, but you say you felt the love and the heart opening and stuff. How, like, afterwards, is that still with you? Or?
No, that only lasted for the first, like, maybe 10-15 minutes. After that, I guess I got a bit more bored, like, I just kind of, like, I was done with it. I would try to have kind of like interesting visions, and I got some stuff, but it was pretty limited. I even during the circle, and when we were pulling the oracle cards, I remember seeing mine and being kind of like annoyed or disappointed. I remember thinking like, this doesn't like resonate with me, and I really enjoy cards, so I like really like enjoy tarot and any different like angel cards,
gambling,
right. I like playing Snap, but because I can always make something relevant to what's going on. But with my card, I'll ask you about yours in a sec. It was just two faces, fairly well drawn, but one they were called ether and matter, and I was like, that's like
the spirit elements, world and the material world.
Yeah, and I thought of the elements like earth and air. And I'm like, no, I like the elements of fire. And if I had to pick another one, I'd say water. I don't really like earth and air.
The new paradigm is going to suit you really well.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. But just nothing about them seemed very relevant. But then when I was given my interpretation, Sven talked about integration and this kind of bridging of like kind of this world of like matter with the kind of the etheric world and maybe the new paradigm and all of this stuff. And I thought, actually, that is really significant to me. And if I'm kind of interested in anything right now, it's how can you integrate these kind of concepts and what you might take from a sharing circle or an experience like that and bring them into the real world. And we talk about integration, and I've been thinking a lot about it. So that did strike me as something
I don't
interesting.
want to feed your woo, but at the Chalice Wells, which is a sacred spring in Glastonbury, we talk about it in the Glastonbury episode a little bit. The logo, that makes it sound, the design of wrought iron on the lid of the well of two circles that intersect and overlap, that represents spirit and matter overlapping. That's basically the card you had. That's the same thing. Kat bought a key ring of that symbol.
Well, I've got goosebumps.
It's so funny though how you can, and my card was kind of like that too. My card was called The Last Cloak, and Sven was like, oh, this is all about shedding old identities,
which is exactly what I was thinking.
But to be fair, it's also what he said.
Yes, and all of his cards are probably going to relate back to similar things that he spoke about. And I think, but Paul's was also very relevant to our experiences. He got a dragon, and we'd been talking all about dragons and the Archangel Michael, and so I mean, these are all common themes.
It was really funny when it got round to Paul was the last person in the circle to speak, and there's this voice that you adopt when you're doing a sharing circle, which Paul described as the calling in sick to work voice. It's like a very low, slow, gentle voice.
I'm sorry, I just can't. Yeah.
This was my experience, and I think it means this, but the energies. That's the kind of voice everyone adopts, but Paul can't or won't do that voice.
So I suppose it's my turn now.
And off he goes, just chatting away about, because he got the dragon card and he's like, well, this made me think of what I'd heard earlier about dragons and that.
It's so great because all the three of us, we played along, right? We're there kind
Played along sounds so mean.
But I don't know, but it's like the nicest thing you can do, isn't it?
I suppose so. I was walking in front, and this is a thing that I struggle with in general. I don't want to be dishonest about who I am and what I think, so I will try not to lie. But also, I don't want to be a dick and ruin everyone's evening by saying, I think this is all bullshit. Right. So I'm like, I will happily share my experience, but I'm not going to pretend I think it's magic.
Exactly.
That's my rule.
I can usually find something nice and helpful to say. There was another event that we took part in, which we'll talk about another day. But in that one, I felt less able to share anything positive, and it came out like I couldn't lie. You know, it's really hard to make something up if you didn't experience anything or had a kind of even a negative one. It is really hard to lie. So it's interesting how we kind of conform to these experiences.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's a really interesting observation. Yeah, because the social pressure to say something. I have this theory about sharing circles. I don't think this is why we have sharing circles. I think we have sharing circles because people like doing them. But I think another function they fulfill is they solidify people's experiences, because as soon as you put your experience into words, it becomes that sort of almost replaces the actual experience in your memory. And you remember what you said instead of what happened. And because everyone's reporting very similar things in a similar language, it sort of formalizes everyone's experience and neatens it up, so everyone goes away with this little package of memories in their head of what it was.
It's really helpful, and in a way we should do more of it. You know, you could like meet a friend for lunch and be like, so, you know, like, how was your experience of this? Like, let's just recap. Okay, maybe only I would enjoy that, but I do think it adds something. And what I like about it is, similar to personality tests, it tells you stuff that you kind of already knew, but maybe you weren't thinking it, and then you can kind of adopt that if it suits, you know, some of the stuff.
I get what you're saying about it being useful, but I also think that it has a disadvantage in that, because there's a social pressure to conform to a certain language and a certain experience, if you didn't have that language or experience, you're going to like move a couple of degrees towards the experience everyone else had, right? Just so you can say it. Yes. And then that's what you remember happening. And then if you did that every time you went to see Sven, you just move it a couple of degrees, a little bit more towards that, until you're channeling the aliens.
Oh my God, it's a slippery slope. And I fully agree with that, because you will start using those words.
Yeah, you can't help it.
No, I agree.
Before you know it, you're holding space.
Happens. Oh no.
This is cats.
We're gonna have, it's my trigger word. So should we talk a little bit about
who these people were that he was challenging? Channeling. I keep saying challenging. He wasn't challenging anyone. I mean, the Archangel Michael, let's start with him.
Yes, sure.
You know more about him than I do.
So, yeah, and so we'd met, in theory, the Archangel Michael the day before, because we had been told a little bit about the legend of the Archangel Michael from John, our tour guide. So, Michael is often depicted slaying a dragon, and you might see him in pictures holding a sword, usually by the blade, which represents the overcoming of the ego, which is a painful but honourable feat. And so that's kind of his deal. But he's like such an all-rounder, right? So he's known for fixing mechanical and electrical problems.
Of course.
He can also assist in giving you courage, direction, energy and vitality, life purpose, motivation, space clearing, spiritual release, worthiness and self-esteem. So
is that like the guys who come in and an old house?
The Ghostbusters.
Yeah, oh no, I was thinking like if someone, like a relative dies and you can't deal with the emotional trauma of cleaning out their house, you call
in the Archangel Michael. What's funny, okay, these archangels, they're pretty handy to have around. My mum has this thing where if anything goes missing, she'll pray to Saint Anthony.
Oh, really?
Have you heard of that?
No, so I've heard of people saying little incantations when they lose stuff.
Yeah, well, this is powerful. I have never known anything not to be found after my mum has prayed to Saint Anthony. Just saying. Wow. So as the story goes, Michael commands, in the Bible, so this is his story in the Bible, is that he commands God's army against Satan's forces in the book of Revelation.
Whoa. Oh, is that the first time he turns up? Or is he...
I think so. I think he might have been in other places, but I think the book of Revelation is where he kind of has his...
Is he linked to St. Michael?
Yes.
The Archangel Michael is St. Michael. They're like...
I think so.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I have no idea. I'm just asking.
Definitely don't hold my word to it. But I think they're the same dude. Maybe I think the saint got upgraded.
Okay, fair enough.
I have no idea. It's like a Pokemon. So anyway, the Archangel Michael conquers Satan, and after the battle, Satan is cast down to earth with the fallen angels, where they kind of lead the whole world astray. But anyway, so he's a pretty, he's a powerful, a heavy hitter in the angel world.
How does that link to the paradigm thing, do you think?
The new paradigm?
Yeah.
Why would he have that to say? Okay, so I don't really think... he's a symbol, isn't he? And I think some people are just going to really like that symbol.
Oh, you don't think Sven's like into the Bible?
I think his name is Michael, and he liked the Archangel Michael.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Without a doubt. No, I mean, maybe there's another connection, but I couldn't find any real link towards why Sven felt particularly attached to him. I will say that I've heard other people who are just kind of interested in spiritual things be like, oh yeah, I just really love the Archangel Michael. Like, he's just one of the ones that people just really like. And I've found some great YouTube videos. One dude has this incredible story about him having like a real like drug addiction and had a really bad experience, and he was kind of at home recovering, and he has this vision of this this guy who was really friendly and kind of did a in the Christmas Carol when Scrooge is visited by all the ghosts.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that. Here's what would happen to you if you followed on this path. And he's like, always, Archangel Michael is always depicted kind of dressed in like almost a Roman centurion outfit, but with big wings and like golden hair. Kind of like Sven. Honestly, like they look identical. And the guy in the YouTube video, he didn't know of the Archangel Michael before he saw this.
So he saw a kind of Roman centurion with blonde hair.
Yeah, and like a blue light. And I will say that the colour blue is associated with Michael. And then he told his brother, and the brother was like, have you ever seen what Archangel Michael looks like? And then he saw it and he cried. And it was a very touching story. Yeah. So you find a lot of stories like this. And I looked at some of the comments, which is a great thing to do on YouTube. I love Archangel Michael. He talks to me in my right ear. I adore his direct approach.
Sorry. Of course, in the right ear.
And dry sense.
He has a dry sense of humour. Amazing. That explains that joke about being on the toilet. Oh my god, YouTube comments are the best place to
I'm going to ignore those, but they're so funny. Maybe I'll come back to them. But some of the ways that you experience Michael is that you hear the word Michael, you see the colour blue, you hear the guidance, you see his armour and weapons, like that kind of imagery. So yeah, I can see how people, once you know these associations, you might, I have to scroll by the comments, you might start, seeing it and hearing it. And I can imagine how useful as a guide that might be for people who... Are
you saying you can understand sort of how someone becomes a channeler?
No, I can see how people get really interested in the symbol of Archangel Michael. As for the channeling, I mean, I think the best way to describe it, I mean, maybe I should talk a little bit about Sven.
Yeah.
Because maybe, I mean... When I read his bio on his site, it's one of the most humble I've seen in any kind of spiritual guru, if you can call him that. I don't even know if he would definitely not identify as that. But I feel
like he's on his way to being a guru.
He's got it in him. But yeah, he felt different as a child. He went to university to study physics. So, he did go to uni. I do believe he dropped out. A lot of things, he says that a lot of things in his life weren't working and he felt isolated. And around this time, he met somebody in the gym, of all places, who introduced him to spiritual books. And he joined a group, found a teacher, and I don't think he says who that was. He went on a silent retreat. Again, these are experiences that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
And then things started changing. Like I said, he quit university. He started his first relationship that he had in 20 years. Ultimately, he actually developed chronic fatigue, which again is something that I've heard a lot in spiritual circles. People have these, what I think some people would call as like spiritual diseases in a way, because it's really hard to kind of get a diagnosis for these things.
Yeah.
And anyway, he started eating better. He took an online course by a man called Richard Miller called Verbal Dancing.
He emailed me about this.
Interesting.
So I emailed him to get the recording of him channeling. Maybe we'll put in a little bit at the beginning of that. And he sent me a follow-up email which has a link to read that book.
Oh, amazing.
I'm now part of his spiritual circle or something, and I'm going to get updates about what
fantastic.
Yeah. So I've heard of that book.
Because I didn't look too much more into it, but
I can't say I'm that motivated to read it, to be honest, but
so Sven found Glastonbury on holiday and decided to stick around. And then that's when he found his star of origin, Pleiades.
What?
And started channeling.
He found his star of origin?
Star of origin.
So he originated there?
Yeah.
In the Pleiadians? in the Pleiades, that open star cluster?
Those were the words used.
Okay.
Spiritually.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like, I didn't even bat an eye at that. I was like, I can imagine how people, like, metaphorically have a connection to these places. I don't think he
it's
really
just the word
thought,
origin that surprised me.
You don't want to throw that around too much. And then he started channeling, made some art, and sound healing. Sound healing was a common thing in Glastonbury as well, very popular right now. His bio actually ends very abruptly, stating that he moved out of Glastonbury, so he doesn't actually live there now, and started to walk the southwest coast path with a tent on my back. And it ends, I walked from campsite to campsite and did some wild camping occasionally. The walking really grounded me and showed me many beautiful places, and that's literally where it ends. So it's like this nice bio that is probably going to keep evolving on his journey.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. And so now he's offering like different services, but none are very high end. You know, it doesn't look like he's a crook, you know? He's also produced an incredible amount of free content. So he's got his verbal dancing book. He's got the Lemurian Oracle deck, which we experienced. Audio products from a $5, healing tools.
What's a healing tool?
So that is, he calls it Pleiadian healing. So I think it's similar to what we would have experienced. I think he would have been probably singing in.
Oh, I see. It's not a literal. It's not a physical object.
I don't think so. Okay. But the sound healing is just 30 minutes. Is £30. 60 minutes is £60. It's pretty like gentle offerings.
Yeah.
And I just want to read out a couple of things he said about channeling. I can choose to step aside so that Archangel Michael and or the Pleiadians can bring their message through me. In this effective way of energy transmission, they sometimes speak in words and sometimes speak or sing in tones and tongues.
Oh, so that's the weird singing he was doing.
And that is called light language. I'd heard of that before, but I'd never heard it. And when I do channeling, I'm always aware of the process. I don't go into a trance. So that's kind of interesting, because I think a lot of people would say, you know, I just lose myself. I just go out of it. And actually, a channeler that I listen to, Abraham Hicks, I believe she doesn't know what's going on when she's saying it. She has to watch them back, the videos back. And some lessons from the Pleiadians, just to kind of give people a taste. This one I love. Telepathic communication is a bit like Facebook. Everyone has a personal profile that you can log into. In this analogy, logging in is simply attuning to that person. The data and the information that you receive is multidimensional. Only a small part is linear words.
Oh my God, I'm drifting off as you're speaking. It just doesn't make any sense.
But no, it kind of does, because listen to this bit. So only a small part is linear words. Like in Facebook, you've got a little bit of text. Images make a bigger part. And the biggest part is a set of multidimensional codes.
Oh, of course.
Remember he kept saying codes?
Oh, yeah,
and it sounded like goats.
It sounded like goats. He said, oh, I'm getting the multidimensional goats. And I was like, whoo.
But like, now I'm reading back and I'm like, oh yeah, of course. It's just like Facebook. It's like, it's nothing like Facebook. That analogy is crazy.
No, but it's interesting to get an insight into what his experience is when he's channeling.
I think so too.
So do you think, what's your read on him? Do you think he genuinely believes he's getting messages from these?
Without a shadow of a doubt. And this is the thing about channeling. I really do think that people, because I have experienced very occasionally, like, speech where I'm not like overthinking it, and that feels like you're in a flow state. And we've all heard about flow state. Maybe, you know, Michiel Kroon talks a lot about it, but that I think is what a lot of people, especially like Michael, who says he's not out of it, is doing by channeling. They're kind of just like chatting shit is what I would call it, but in a really like helpful and informative way. And you wouldn't be able to do it if you hadn't already read a lot of stuff or listened to a lot of stuff. And what you were saying earlier about, you know, the more you attend these things and pick up on the language, the more you're going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see if I could like, you know, practice being a channeler.
Oh, I'd love you should do that as a special episode.
It'd be
just
fun.
You being a channeler. In fact, we could have a channel off.
Yes.
I'll channel the Pleiadians. Do you do Archangel Michael? You can choose your own Archangel
I feel like we could.
Archangel.
I think I could channel Bridget.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Saint Bridget.
I actually looked up a study because I was curious about this, about what's going on psychologically when people are channeling. And it's hard to find to find stuff on it.
Yeah.
But I did find one study published in the Journal of Religion and Health. It's called Disassociation, Adjustment or Distress, Dissociative Phenomena, Absorption and Quality of Life Among Israeli Women Who Practice Channeling Compared to Women with Similar Traumatic History.
Wow.
Catchy title. So basically they found that people who channel exhibit certain traits more than average, certain psychological traits, and the two that they picked up on in the study were disassociation, which is basically feeling detached from the world around you and also perhaps from your own senses and from your own thoughts, and absorption, which is the ability to get lost in fictional worlds and art. The quote that I drew out of the abstract of this study said, channelers presented significantly higher levels of dissociation, absorption, and psychological health compared to the other group. So they're not crazy.
No.
They're healthy. They're functioning fine in society, but they have a couple of dials turned up in their brains, which make them more prone to feeling like they are being spoken through.
Okay.
And getting lost in that speech.
Yes.
And that is a plausible explanation for why some people
find it easier than others. Well, I mean, I can really see that because, for example, if I was somebody who is better at that stuff, because I'm really not good at that, I would get more out of these experiences, like the experience with Sven. Yeah. So my mind would have been creating all of these amazing things. And I'd be somebody who might really take to guided meditations and maybe even be able to create my own. Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm not very good at that. So I'm going to be less likely to try it. Yeah. But this seems more likely to me because often I watched a couple of skeptic videos on channeling, and a lot of them said basically they're either con artists or they are like doing some kind of, it's almost like sleepwalking, or they're mentally ill. This is some kind of symptom of mental illness, like some weird automatism that's happening, that's coming over them. So they're either crazy or con artists. And I was like, I don't think either of those explanations quite work. I think either could, but I think the more likely one is people have very amazing imaginations and it's really cool. I think it's really cool that people can channel, and I can tell the difference between one of my favorite channelers, but also somebody like Sven, who isn't really saying anything brand new, but they're also just nice words, which sound good.
So you have a favorite channeler?
So I've mentioned Abraham Hicks before, yeah.
What do you get out of the experience?
Very much like Sven, it's literally the most comforting words I could imagine hearing. And it's also done in this clever way where she, Esther, puts in humour. And the whole point is like, there are some channeled books by Abraham, but you would also, she does like Q&As. So an audience member will come up and ask a question and she'll like give a really solid answer, which is really like comforting, but also applicable to like anyone in the room. It's very, very clever. And I think that high level, like there's a reason why they're so popular. You can't easily do that. So somebody like Sven is doing a good job, but I think one of my thing is like, no Abraham.
So how do you think about what she's doing though? Do you think of it as she's channeling something else?
No, it's what I described. It's somebody who is like, she's a smart, funny old lady, and when she started it, it's got like a ridiculous story to it, but let's say that it's somebody who probably had a pretty like nice upbringing, and she's just like, a lot of it isn't the overall message is just like be happy. Yeah, like she's not trying to get you to do anything ridiculous. She will say like maybe meditate a bit, but it's not hooked onto any other kind of complicated system. Whereas other people do more of that. They've kind of created a whole world where their kind of character fits into it.
But it doesn't devalue it. Like, if you don't believe that she's really channeling Abraham...
Absolutely not. I think you can still enjoy it, regardless of whether you believe that this character, Abraham, or all of these other kind of like, what do they call them? Source energies exist. But you could still make it fit into any religion. You can make it fit into you could kind of make it fit into science. We should talk about it another day, but like there's definitely something to it. regardless of what you believe is going on.
Yeah, so she's channeling Abraham.
Yes.
Our guy, Sven, is channeling, I really can't say that word, the Archangel Michael. I can't ever get into it because I just can't say it. I wouldn't be able to say what I was doing.
I'm challenging.
So he channels the Archangel Michael and also the Pleiadians.
Yes.
And that was really the draw for me because it just seems so delightfully outlandish. So we didn't learn that much about Pleiadians from Sven, but I went away and did a little bit of research. When I first started with the Pleiades, because Pleiades are a group of 7 stars. You can see them. You can only see 7 without a telescope. If you look at Orion and Orion's belt, you just go up and right from there and you'll find them. They're wintertime in our hemisphere. You'll see them usually.
Can't wait.
Yeah. So yeah, we would have to go out and have a look for them. And we can wave to our friends up there. But yeah, the weird thing is there's lots of myths and stories about the Pleiades because there's such a weird little, not weird, but they're a noticeable little cluster right there. I've heard them called the 7 Sisters.
I didn't know there were multiple. I feel like in what I read from Sven, it was almost like he thought he came from one star called
Maybe
the
he
Pleiades.
comes from one star in that cluster.
Yeah.
It's about 400 light years away.
Wow.
And it's about 150 million years old, which is interesting because our sun is 4.5 billion years old. So this is a very young cluster compared to ours. So if there are planets up there and they do have life, it would be unlikely to be anything more than bacteria, if that, because it's so young.
Oh, that's sad. I mean, you could say that time moves differently over there.
You could say that.
You could
yes,
say that.
You could
it
say
wouldn't
that.
Be true, but
so there are loads of myths about that. I've heard Aboriginal myths from Australia when I was there about them being I can't remember exactly, but sisters who were stuck up in the sky for some reason. Interestingly, until the 1950s, Jehovah's Witnesses thought God lived there.
Okay.
So there's a good link, right? That was one of my initial
I love the Jehovah's Witnesses.
This is one of my
so creative.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why they gave it up in the 1950s. They gave up a lot of stuff though. I think they've adjusted or changed their beliefs quietly behind the scenes to get rid of some of the more wackier stuff. So that was my initial confusion. What the hell is Archangel Michael and the Pleiadians doing together? It seems really, really strange. But when I started looking at the history of what people think and believe about aliens, it actually kind of makes sense because back in the day, there were lots of mediums channeling spirits and angels and all sorts of things. And then at some point, aliens entered the popular consciousness. So there's in the 1920s, you've got extraterrestrial craft showing up in fiction and urban myths floating around. And in 1947, we've got this guy Kenneth Arnold who sees 9 spacecrafts and he describes them as moving like saucers skipping on water. He's a pilot. He sees these strange things in the sky, which could be anything. Who knows? It's such a long time ago. And you know how first-hand reports are always a bit dodgy because our memories are not great. But anyway, it's published in the newspapers as being flying saucers. Yeah. And so he didn't actually say they looked like saucers. They weren't saucer-shaped, what he saw. But because of that description, people started seeing flying saucers. And it follows from that. And then you have this kind of thing, the UFO phenomenon is kind of rising up. And then you still have the people doing their channeling. And at some point, they sort of meet in the middle. And people start seeing what initially they think are people who come from Venus, Venusians. Oh, yeah. And they match the description of Pleiadians that Sven would probably recognize, which is basically tall, blonde, very attractive, oily people. I got most of my information about the Pleiadians from a website called Rational Wiki. I'll put a link in the show notes, and they summarize everything that has been said about the Pleiadians. They basically just want to help humanity ascend to higher dimensions, and they exist in either the 3rd or the 4th dimension, or the 5th possibly, which is made of pure light and love and creativity.
My favorite of the dimensions.
Exactly. And so they're just, when you think about aliens, as I'm sure you do frequently, you think about those little grey guys.
Yeah.
So they came up much later. People were already seeing things that looked like, which they were calling Vesuvian, people who came from Venus.
And they started blonde.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Those were the first reports. But that makes sense because that's what angels were. Yes. So people seeing things and interpreting them in the cultural context which they were familiar with. And then in the early 90s, I think, the greys start popping up. Oh no, actually, it's got to be like the late 80s because Whitley Strieber saw greys, and maybe like maybe like 1960s, greys start popping up for the first time. People start saying they've been abducted by them, and this is the kind of familiar image of the alien with the short guy, big head, kind of almond-shaped black eyes, really creepy. And in the 1990s, they become sort of associated as slightly sinister characters.
So funny how they started as these kind of like angelic things.
Yeah, but these are different. So how? And then later
different.
we have David Icke talking about reptilians.
Right.
And now we have basically our pantheon of the three most common types of aliens. There are others. You've got the Pleiadians, who we met. We've got the Greys, who are possibly robots. They're more like scientists. They just observe us, and sometimes they'll like abduct us and probe us, but that's just for science. And they're not evil. And then the reptilians, who are actually properly evil and want to cause trouble. So the Pleiadians, they're also sometimes called Nordics. In fact, I've heard that more commonly than Pleiadians, but maybe because Sven loves the stars so much, that was the link he made. They also called Space Brothers. And weirdly, research for another podcast that we're recording soon, the Space Brothers came up again. One of the ways that they explain, well, I don't know whether this is their explanation, or it's just convenient, but the reason why we look so much like them is because we have a common ancestor, the Lyrians. Lyrians, I don't know what they're doing now. They're not about right now. But presumably they came to Earth, seeded us, and then went to the Pleiades and seeded them.
That's not the same as Lemurians, is it?
No. These are the Lyrians. The Lemurians, that's a whole different kettle of fish. Yeah. So that's why they look like us, because we're related. We're cousins.
I mean, I'd love to know where these things originate from. Because it's one person, right?
Yeah,
and they're literally coming up with words. Somebody had to call them a name.
It's just this weird thing of like different cultural threads being pulled together. So you have this thing of people channeling, this thing of people seeing angelic beings, this thing of people talking about UFOs and aliens, and they're all sort of coming together to form this.
And it's all like, they're all like not of this world.
Yeah.
Which humans have had to deal with for a long time. We've dealt with people who don't look like us coming to our countries and, you know, being very alien.
Yeah, there is lots of speculation, and I'm not sure whether this is really fair, but there's quite a lot of speculation because the Nordics or the Space Brothers or the Pleiadians, whatever you want to call them, they're tall and white. They're very Aryan.
Yeah.
And that this might be like an example of some of our unconscious racism coming out, that we project the perfect person obviously has to be this tall, white, Aryan character.
Yeah, it's this strange, or maybe it's like so like ingrained in our kind of genetic ancestry that we're scared of that, or not scared of it, but we're like, well, that's on the outside. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very
weird. I'm not
particularly
Aryan,
but anyway, we have a lot to thank for them because they invented Reiki, ear candling, shiatsu, reflexology, aromatherapy, crystal healing, and dolphins.
I love it so much.
I know, isn't it amazing?
They sound pretty benevolent.
Yeah, they're an interesting bunch, and I think it's kind of cool that we see this like. It's almost like there's lots of similarities with religion. I mean, I call them a pantheon for a reason. You need a good guy, a bad guy, and then you've got the greys in the middle being kind of neutral. And when people talk about ancient aliens, this is who they're talking about. They're talking about the Pleiadians. They're the people who came back and helped us build the pyramids.
Pyramids, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's this kind of thing of like stuff that we can't explain. And to be honest, some stuff we can, because we don't know exactly how the pyramids are built, but it seems quite plausible that they were built by human beings.
They just like were really hardworking human beings.
Yes,
basically.
exactly.
Yeah.
So anything we can't explain, aliens did it. And that way it's kind of like...
Stonehenge?
Yes,
Yep.
yeah. Another, I don't know whether I read any, it seems like the sort of thing that the Pleiadians would have built.
Yeah.
It's like intelligent design for atheists. So there's this idea that humans are so special and wonderful and unique and so different to these rubbish animals that can't do anything, you know, that we live on this planet and there's us and we're amazing, and these animals, they're a bit rubbish, not in our category at all. What makes us different from the animals? And you know, Christians and many people who subscribe to Abrahamic religions will say, well, what makes us different is that God gave us souls.
Right.
That's how we're different from animals. That's a neat explanation. But the explanation that the ancient aliens people come up with is that we're different from animals because at some point in our past, aliens came along and saw our ancestors, our sort of chimp-like ancestors, and they gave us something special, like a little leg up to bring us up a level, which could be described as a soul, or I'm sure they'll describe it as energy or vibrations or something that made us different. And then they helped us out a bit with building pyramids and stuff, and then they buggered off.
Yeah. And also maybe part of us likes to defer to something that's greater than us.
Yeah.
I don't think we fully like being at the top of the rung. I think
that's interesting.
This is just like a personal thing I've discovered in my own life. Like, there is something nice about having, and maybe again, this is an acknowledgement of my own like religious upbringing. There's something nice about deferring to something more powerful and mystical than you.
Yeah.
And some people have it to a lesser or greater degree.
Yeah.
So some people want to be at the top, and that might lead to this kind of guru positioning and people being like, I should be the one who gets to talk to God, and we've always had people like that.
Yeah.
And there are others who are like, I so want to follow the person who talks to God.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah. It's a really weird phenomenon, and I think it's interesting how in different times we've basically just found different ways to have the same experiences, because the experience is you go into a darkened room and some guy talks weird at you.
Yeah.
People that all throughout human history, people have been doing that. I'm sure people did that like in caves, like one of the earliest cave paintings.
Yeah, even before they like fire and stuff, gathering around and just like saying stuff and making sounds and soothing sounds.
Yeah. It's kind of beautiful if you think about it in that context.
Very it connects you with just humankind.
Yeah.
In that way.
So that's the obvious benefit. It's very
soothing. I love this whole like, I mean, you can do this one-to-one. You can kind of hire channelers, I guess, just to talk at you.
Oh, that would be intense.
I really think that it's mostly a group thing. And I think that there is something to it. And from what I've seen, a lot of these kind of online channelers and people who've been doing it for a while, it's a bonding experience for the people there. Because you're going to get some real like minds. I mean, at an Abraham show, those audiences are going to be like some of the most happy clappy people in the world. And it's so like the fact that people are called up on stage and you're risking somebody being a total weirdo, but they're not. They're just nice, happy people.
Yeah.
Anyway,
what do you think if you did go to an Abraham? Maybe we should go to an Abraham Hicks show.
I would love to.
Depending on how expensive it is. But yeah, do you think the other people in the audience would feel the same as you? That you don't really think she's channeling anyone, but it's just an interesting...
I think most people would believe it.
And do you think that that's a good thing?
This is, again, we need to talk more about what exactly she's saying, because I would say with this...
I'm just talking more generally about channeling.
Yeah, I know, it's fair, but it's like, I think with that one, it's fine, because there isn't very much to it. It's quite like a simple idea. But with others, I think there is more of a danger. Like, I really do think that it depends on what you're getting asked to believe.
Yeah, I'm not sure it does. I don't know. Maybe this is irrational, but I just think the idea of a group of people all believing something that is like really demonstrably untrue.
So this is where we can definitely disagree, because I definitely think that there are some healthy beliefs. I wouldn't even say healthy. There's some neutral beliefs that actually could be more helpful than harmful, and I think Abraham Hicks and like her philosophy is one. I really think that it's not a black and white thing, and I think we're all believing in some stuff that can't be proven.
Yeah,
because we've kind of just like agreed that is the easiest way to kind of live.
Yeah.
But I can also see like the point in questioning those things.
Yeah,
of course.
See, that's what worries me, and this is what I think when we think about an audience of people coming to see a channeler.
Yeah.
The common belief. I'm not really talking about the beliefs of everyone is light or love or energy, anything like that. I don't necessarily think that's harmful. But the thing that I think is potentially harmful is the fact that the people believe that some people, but not everyone, but some special people have access to a higher realm and can channel wisdom, and we should all sit down and listen to them.
Why not?
Because why not just have some people are amazing artists and very thoughtful people, and they say interesting things, let's sit down and listen to them.
We do.
Yeah, but why do you need? Because if someone's an artist or a philosopher or a scientist, any of those people gets up and do a talk, they can give you wisdom, they can give you something that makes you think about stuff, all sorts of interesting stuff, but you're allowed to question it because you don't have this belief that it's coming from
higher.
That's where it makes me concerned?
I kind of disagree with both. I would say that like you could disagree with the channeler. I mean, people's questions, I'm just going to use Abraham because it's the only one I know. They are being like, Abraham, clarify this. You know, like I don't get, you said this, but I don't understand it. It's like I imagine like in the Judaism, there's a lot of questioning going on there. And it's not to like disprove the other person. It's more like, let's talk about this. I want to make sense of this for myself. And I don't see how it's any different when you're talking to an artist. I can't imagine how if you go and see somebody talk, or whether it's an author, you're just trying to make sense. I heard Jordan Peterson describe a good argument the other day. And it's not so one person can win. It's so that you can both kind of like find out a way to move forward.
Yeah.
And that's all these people are doing. I don't see how...
But they're putting themselves in this elevated position, right? They're saying that I have access to a truth that you don't have access to because I'm the channel for a supernatural being.
I think as soon as you step on stage, that's what you're doing. Anyone's doing that. And you're doing that too. We're all doing it.
But they're literally doing it. Like there's a difference between
kind of doing it by default.
Assuming a position of authority by standing on a stage and literally getting up on stage and saying aliens are talking through me.
I don't care where and I think a lot of people in the crowd don't care where the wisdom's coming from. I think it's the same with Abraham. I think people are like, well, I'm glad I found this. It's soothing. It's comforting. I like what she's saying. It seems helpful. It's like paying somebody, like paying a coach, paying a psychologist, like anyone who's kind of helping you in some way. You're going to give them some money and you're going to be like, yeah, I'm going to see you as the authority because that's the game we're playing. I don't feel like you're making me do something that I don't want to do because that is a danger. And we can totally talk about that in the episode with the kind of cult guy. But I think people are like willingly doing this.
I'm just saying that if I got a message and it was from a philosopher, an artist or a writer or any kind of intellectual who I respected and it said something that I thought was dubious, I'd be like, well, I'll look into that. If I got a message from someone who said they were literally channeling an angel, I would, and I believed they were channeling an angel, I think, who am I to question it? They're a fucking angel. That would be my response. I wouldn't be like, oh...
I just wonder if we do that with scientists anyway, because like they're scientists, but...
People do treat scientists like they're gods, and that's not good. Like we should feel free to question scientists and intellectuals of any stripe. But I think you're even less likely to question them if they're literally claiming divinity.
For sure, and I think some people are going to be more willing to defer to it than others. So, because really, there are some people who are just more questioning.
Yes,
let's say that.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think I almost feel like I hold it in the same amount. So, say if I was really into Sven as my guru and I was like, yeah, I just love this guy who channels Archangel Michael, Pleiadians, I might take on about 70% of what he says and like internalize it and be like, I really believe this is really helpful, and I'll probably just ignore the other 30%.
But how can you ignore it if it's coming from the Archangel Michael?
So I think this is just where it's a personality thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
no,
maybe.
It really is. And it's like it's a difference between a fundamentalist and somebody who's like my mum, who will go to church on every now and then and give some money to the priest. Like there are always going to be some people who take it a little bit too far and ruin the game.
I don't think Sven is in any danger of becoming a cult leader or telling people to do anything nasty, so I'm not worried about him.
If you're going to follow somebody,
but I do think it's something to have like on our radar. That thing of like, what does it mean to claim authority in that way? Because there's something that lots of people do, and you know, some people use it for good and some people use it for ill. But I just think the whole idea of claiming it, to me, is a bit worrying.
And I think it'd be interesting when we do these experiences to flag up the bits that like could be more dangerous. As far as I know, Sven certainly wasn't saying anything that could lead to a dangerous thing.
Apart from, well, I don't know whether this could lead to a dangerous thing, but we forgot to mention, when Paul was sharing in the sharing circle, he said something that reminded Sven to tell us all that karma had been cancelled. Was going to be cancelled in the new paradigm.
Exactly. So we should get ready to like just do anything.
So I don't know what that meant. Like,
I tried to find out more about this, and again, I really couldn't. I just didn't find anything where there is a group of people or an authority, and I'm sure there are, but the karma thing, I don't feel like it's going anywhere soon, but it was interesting to see somebody who is questioning that.
Yeah, it was, I think he said, like, I don't know whether he said this or I just came to understand this myself. You know, the Akashic records?
Oh, yeah.
It's like a database of all our karma.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the cookies will be cleared.
It's great.
In the new paradigm.
It's great
and
news.
we all get to start again.
Maybe that could lead to somebody being like, but in order to clear the Akashic records, we all need to kill ourselves.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I mean, that would be a crazy thing.
That would be a crazy thing.
I'm sure no one would ever have done that before.
No, well, exactly. This is the whole thing about this. Like,
yeah,
there's suddenly possibilities open up for really worrying things to happen.
Exactly. No, I do see that. And like, that's a great example of when you start taking this a bit too seriously. Yeah.
But you haven't been shaken in your devotion to channelers. You're still
no. I'm
in
like I like the concept as somebody who but chooses to share experiences and like maybe a bit of knowledge. You do have to kind of assume a role. You can't be too questioning yourself. And I think it's almost easier if I was to say, oh, now I'm channeling this version of myself. Like, just kind of positioning it, like wearing another hat. Yeah. And that's all they're doing. They're wearing this different hat. And yeah, they are going kind of far when they're like talking about different worlds and aliens.
Kind of far.
But the message itself is generally very pleasant and helpful. And it's a lot of it is similar to what you'll get told in like CBT and like a lot of, yeah.
I find it a really interesting experience. I don't know. I didn't really know what to expect out of channeling. So I don't know. It's hard to say whether my mind changed about what it is. I guess I was probably a little bit concerned. To be honest, I was a little bit concerned going in that this would be someone who was mentally ill. Yeah. And that we were paying to watch him dance.
And encourage
it.
Yeah.
Which seems a bit macabre, to say the least. But I didn't, especially after reading that study, I was like, oh no, this is just a normal human thing that we do turned up to 11.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel like I was taking part in, and I didn't feel like we were exploiting Sven. No. So that was I feel better about that. I have a general uneasiness, as I said, about the whole claiming authority, unearned authority. But I don't think Sven's dangerous. I don't think this is dangerous. It was quite a pleasant experience. I probably wouldn't do it again. Yeah. But guided meditations are fun. I like them. Okay. So, and this is what I took this as.
It was mostly that.
Yeah. So, and also I've got a glimpse into why, because when I said, oh, channeling, that's crazy, I've never done that before, like, oh, well, I have a favourite channeler. That really surprised me, because I thought channeling was like out there bonkers. Yeah. But now I've witnessed it, I'm like, oh, it's not actually that crazy. I'll
make you watch an Abraham video and then...
Yes, let's do an episode on Abraham Hicks, shall we?
We will.
Okay, well, look forward to that in the future.
I just don't know how to end it. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Let us know with a tweet or an email. We'd love to hear about your experiences.
Yes, please tell us what we got wrong. You can email us at hello@seekerandskeptic.com and follow us on Twitter @SeekerSkeptic.
You'll find the show notes for this and every episode at seekerandskeptic.com.
And you can find my skeptically themed comics at RebeccaOnPaper.com or follow me on Twitter @RebeccaOnPaper.
And I'm @YogisWhoShave on Twitter, and you can find me bringing secular yoga to the masses at yogiswhoshave.com.
If you like what you heard and fancy supporting the show and spreading the word, we'd really appreciate a rating and review in the Apple Podcast Store.
Or tell somebody you know about the show.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.